The banh mi is an essential part of Vietnamese culture and possibly one of the most popular Vietnamese dishes worldwide. In the late 1880s, France colonized Vietnam and brought the baguette. Vietnamese bakers started adding dough enhancers in order to produce more bread with less flour, which gave us that light and airy texture that we appreciate in the Vietnamese baguette. I really actually did not enjoy eating my own cultural food when I was growing up. And the gateway dish for me when I was growing up was the banh mi. So we're going to visit 3 different chefs, one representing from the north, one from the central region, and one from the south, to see what differentiates the banh mi in the different regions. And then I'm gonna take what I've learned and try to make a sandwich that represents the entire country. First up is Chef Daniel Lay at Hanoi Soup Shop.
The banh mi's here in the US are very dense. We usually hollow out the bread, and then you would start with a smear of pate. The next would be Vietnamese ham, gia lua. Pretty much lean meat. You would get a couple of slices, and then you would get giò tu, which is like a head cheese, and then there would be a piece of egg. This banh mi is already kind of stuffed. There's 3 different proteins in here. Traditionally, back in the days, you'd usually just get either pate and a slice of meat, and that would be completely it. Everybody gets a little splash of Maggi.
And Maggi seasoning is a seasoning that was made from the Swiss and was introduced by the French, most likely in the late 1880s, and it adds a lot of umami.
And lots of fresh black pepper.
So right off the bat, I get a lot of black pepper notes. And I think a lot of that black pepper is coming from its proximity to China and its ability to harvest black peppercorns and not really grow chilies. So another thing that I'm getting a lot from here is this sandwich is just more modestly sized than we're accustomed to seeing. That has a lot to do with the economic conditions of northern Vietnam when banh mi was created. They didn't have the ability to stuff the sandwich with lots of meats, lots of herbage, lots of fresh chilies. Next up is Chef Helen Nguyen at Saigon Social.
I usually start off with Vietnamese mayo, give it a nice lather, and then the pate. So this pate is made with chicken liver. Throw in a slice of cucumber. We're gonna layer it with some terrine, Vietnamese ham, and then head cheese. So in central Vietnam, we use a lot of vegetables and herbs. We have like a Vietnamese sambal, which is some red chilies. There's a lot of chili, different variations of peppers. And in the central region, my family uses pork floss for a lot of things. My family didn't really have any like refrigerations. My grandparents used to shred this and then just let it, dehydrate. It was a way to preserve the meat. I have pork shoulder here. Gonna marinate it. Okay. Gonna give it a nice pounding so that the meat starts to break away. I have a basket, and you're gonna rub it against the basket to help fray the meat. Throw it on here, and you're essentially dehydrating it. And as it's drying, it's turning to like a nice brown color. No Vietnamese sandwich is complete without the Maggi seasoning.
So immediately, one of the first things I notice is this sandwich is a little bit more filled than the northern style one. Also noticing a lot more greenage, a lot more crunch from vegetables. A lot of it has to deal with the more abundance of farmland as we get further down south. The next thing I'm really picking up is a little bit more sweetness, and I could probably attribute that to the addition of pork floss. We're gonna visit Chef Jimmy Lee at Madame Vo Barbecue.
So I usually like to add mayonnaise on both sides. And then I'm gonna start with my head cheese. And then on this side, we're gonna put gia lua, which is a Vietnamese sausage. And then we have jang bong, which is Vietnamese pork belly. I like to add that in the middle. So every bite will be the same. Some people add pate on the bread, but I learned a trick when I was in South Vietnam. They add the pate onto the meat in the middle of the sandwich. We're gonna be grilling nam noon. It's a savory, sweet Vietnamese ground pork dish that brings up the sweetness into the meats. Daikon carrots, I like them a little thicker because I like that crunch. Cucumber, and then cilantro. I like to eat it hot, so I always add some Thai chili peppers as well. And of course, Maggi soy sauce. This is my idea of a traditional Southern style sandwich. That's pretty. Seriously, look at these layers, bro.
The key things I get out of this are the sandwich is really stuffed, but it's still well balanced at the same time. I'm also picking up on a lot of grilled flavors in the cold cuts, which is something that's very unique and different. Finally, I can taste a lot of the natural sweetness coming out in the marinade, which helps kind of balance out this sandwich and alleviate the heaviness. Now that I've had all these delicious banh mi's, I'm excited to get back to the D&D kitchen to make a banh mi that I feel represents Vietnam. So I'm gonna first start off by adding some of our aioli. The next step, I'm going to use some of our jalua. This was something that we saw in all the banh mi's today, so I felt it was really important to keep that consistent. What I think makes this particular deli meat very special is the addition of black peppercorns that we get here. And we actually bring these in from Vietnam, from the Phu Quoc Island. And then I'm going to add on some of our house-made pate. So this is our pate. So we're gonna pour this through a tammy. Move it back and forth. We've got our butter melted. We have our ground pork. We have some salt and sugar. And then we have some ginger scallions cooked down with some shallot oil. So I'm gonna add all these ingredients in here and then mix them by hand. Just make sure this is all incorporated. We're gonna whip it again. It's nice and pink and red. It's not dense and crumbly. It's just one nice spreadable product. I'm also gonna do a little technique that I learned from Jimmy as well about layering on all this pate so you kind of get an even bite. I'm gonna put another layer of the jalou on. Not too much this time because like I said, I really liked the modest size of the northern style banh mi. We're gonna also add in pork floss. Pork floss is something I saw that Chef Helen used in the central region. What I enjoy about the pork floss is it's kind of like a beef jerky. It adds like a nice texture in the sandwich. Some basil, cilantro, some scallions that were cut very fine and then soaked in water to make curly. Instead of packing with protein, I'm gonna pack it with the herbs and vegetables. So to add spice and heat to the sandwich, I'm going to actually take some cues from the north and the central region. I'm going to use some of the fresh black pepper that I saw in the northern region and combine it with the fresh chili heat by using a house-made hot sauce. And you can possibly make a Vietnamese banh mi sandwich without using magie. What I took away from everything was in the north, we had a lot of the black pepper spice, a more modest size sandwich, which I really appreciated. From the central region, it was all about the vegetation, the crunch from all the fresh vegetables and the fresh chilies. The central region has a little bit more farmland, so you could expect that there. And then from the southern region, I really took away layering the pate in between the meats, which I found really delicious because it really evenly distributed the pate. As a chef, what I really appreciate about the banh mi is its use of humble ingredients, and the sum of its parts ends up being greater than itself.